Just recently, these news articles came out stating that the San Andreas Fault has reached its highest level of stress in 1,000 years, raising alarm bells of a possible massive earthquake occurring on the fault system in the near future.
Scientists once thought they had California figured out. Then, new technology began revealing a landscape that is changing faster and in stranger ways than anyone realized. Beneath its beaches, mountains, and deserts, enormous tectonic forces are constantly reshaping the state. Every earthquake, rising mountain, and shifting fault is part of a much bigger story. California isn't simply sitting on the edge of a continent. It's being rebuilt before our eyes. The edge that never stops sliding. Everything about California begins with the fault. The San Andreas is not a single crack, but a whole system of them running the length of the state, marking the boundary where the Pacific Plate scrapes northwest against the North American Plate. West of that line, the sliver holding Los Angeles, Big Sur, the outer coast, is quite literally leaving. It creeps northwest a couple of inches every year, and given enough millions of years, that coastline will carry itself past San Francisco and on toward Alaska. California is a state slowly tearing along a dotted line. Follow that line to its wild northern end, off Cape Mendocino, and you reach one of the most geologically violent spots on the continent, the Mendocino Triple Junction, where three tectonic plates meet and shove at once. It is the most earthquake-prone corner of California, and on the morning of December 5th, 2024, it proved it. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake ruptured the seafloor about 60 miles offshore, so shallow it began less than a mile beneath the ocean bottom. Within moments, a tsunami warning went out to roughly 5 million people along the coast from central California into Oregon. In Ferndale and Eureka, bottles shattered, water mains broke, houses shifted on their foundations. And then something new happened, something that wouldn't have been possible a decade earlier. California's Shake Alert early warning system fired automatically, and phones from Eureka to Fort Bragg buzzed a warning seconds before the shaking arrived. Not much, but in an earthquake, a few seconds is the difference between standing in a doorway and being caught mid-stride. The tsunami never came. The quake slid sideways rather than heaving the seafloor up. The warning lifted within the hour, but the message underneath it lingered. This is a state that will shake again, and for the first time in history, we're learning to hear it coming. The ground here doesn't only slide though. In one place, it breathes. The supervolcano that's exhaling. Drive up the eastern spine of the Sierra Nevada toward the ski town of Mammoth Lakes. And you cross a vast, subtle bowl in the earth, about 20 miles wide. Most visitors never notice it. It is one of the most dangerous volcanic features in North America. It's called the Long Valley Caldera, and it was born in catastrophe. Roughly 760,000 years ago, this supervolcano erupted with a force almost impossible to picture, blasting out around 650 cubic kilometers of ash and rock, enough to bury a modern city under a blanket of debris a kilometer deep. The eruption emptied the magma chamber so completely that the ground collapsed into the pit it left behind, forming the caldera we see today. And it has never gone fully quiet. For decades, the floor of the caldera has been restless, swelling upward by nearly half an inch a year, shuddering with swarms of small earthquakes. For a long time, no one could say what that unrest meant. Was the sleeping giant refilling? Was fresh magma rising toward the surface? In 2023, a team at Caltech finally looked inside, using one of the most elegant new techniques in all of Earth science. They took a 100-kilometer fiber optic cable, the same kind that carries the internet, and turned it into a listening device. By firing lasers down the glass and measuring how passing seismic waves stretched and wobbled the fiber, They converted that single cable into the equivalent of about 10,000 seismometers. Over a year and a half, it recorded more than 2,000 tiny earthquakes, and artificial intelligence stitched them into the sharpest underground image of the caldera ever made, clear down to 10 kilometers deep. And the picture was, against expectation, reassuring. The magma chamber sits far below, around 12 kilometers down, and it is capped by a hardened lid of crystallized rock, the sign of a system that is cooling, not charging up. The tremors and the swelling aren't magma climbing toward an eruption. They're the exhalations of a giant slowly settling down, releasing trapped gas and fluid as it cools. Researchers described its beating heart as gradually slowing. The supervolcano beneath the Sierra isn't waking, it's falling deeper asleep. And we only know because we finally learned how to press an ear to the earth. Not every recent transformation has been about heat and rock though. Some of the strangest have been about water, arriving where it has no business being. The lakes that came back from the dead. Death Valley is defined by absence. It is the driest place in North America, averaging about 2 inches of rain a year, and it holds the record for the hottest air temperature ever reliably measured on Earth. Its lowest point, Badwater Basin, is a cracked white salt flat 282 feet below sea level. Nothing is supposed to live there. Nothing is supposed to float there. Then, in the span of a few months across 2023 and 2024, the desert did the impossible. First came the remnants of Hurricane Hilary in August 2023, dropping close to a year's worth of rain in a single day and flooding nearly every basin in the park. Then, in February 2024, an atmospheric river swept through and topped it off. And in the lowest, deadest spot in North America, a lake appeared. A shallow sheet of water, 6 miles long and 3 miles wide, glassy and blue, mirroring the mountains. Scientists call it Lake Manly, and it is a ghost, the faint return of a great Ice Age lake that vanished thousands of years ago. For a few weeks, people did something that borders on the surreal. They kayaked across the floor of Death Valley. NASA satellites tracked the lake's rise and fall from orbit, and when a windstorm blew through, the entire lake physically migrated about 2 miles north across the salt before sloshing back, a lake on the move. In its wake came one of the best wildflower superblooms the valley had seen in years. Tens of thousands of acres of desert erupting into color, as if to prove how much life had been waiting in that dead ground all along. And Death Valley wasn't alone. Those same drenching storms briefly resurrected another ghost far to the west, Tulare Lake in the San Joaquin Valley, once the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi before farmers drained it to nothing a century ago. For a season, it flooded back into being across the farm fields that had replaced it, a lake returning to claim ground the maps insisted was gone. California, it turns out, can write a lake into existence and erase it again within a single year. But in the far north, humans have been deliberately reversing an older erasure and bringing a river back to life. The river set free. For more than 100 years, 4 hydroelectric dams choked the Klamath River near the Oregon border. They generated modest power, but they severed one of the great salmon rivers of the West, walling off hundreds of miles of spawning habitat, warming and stagnating the water, and, in 2002, contributing to a die-off that killed tens of thousands of fish. For the Yurok, Karuk and Klamath tribes, whose lives had been braided with these salmon for millennia, it was a slow catastrophe, and they spent decades fighting to undo it. In 2024, they won. The last of the 4 dams came down, completing the largest dam removal in United States history, reopening more than 400 miles of river that salmon hadn't been able to reach in over a century. What happened next stunned even the scientists. The fish didn't wait. Within weeks of the final dam falling in October 2024, A full-run Chinook salmon was spotted in a tributary above the old dam sites in Oregon, the first salmon to reach that water in more than 100 years. Others followed, having swum over 200 miles from the Pacific to get there. By the fall of 2025, monitoring stations were counting more than 10,000 salmon pushing past the site of the former Iron Gate Dam. On the drained reservoir beds, bare, cracked mud just a year earlier, whole forests of willow were spontaneously sprouting, a riparian world rebuilding itself in real time. It is one of the rare stories where the recent discovery is not a warning, but a homecoming, a river unclenched, a fish remembering the way, a culture watching its rivers heal. And yet, for all the drama on the surface, some of California's most astonishing recent finds have come from a place almost no one ever sees, straight down in the dark. The Garden, 2 miles under the waves. About 80 miles off the coast of Monterey rises an extinct undersea volcano called Davidson's Seamount. Its slopes drop into near total blackness, and at its base, some 10,000 feet down, 2 miles beneath the surface, in water just above freezing and under crushing pressure, is one of the strangest gatherings of life ever found on Earth. Researchers first stumbled onto it in 2018 when a remotely operated vehicle's camera panned across the seafloor and revealed something that made no sense. Thousands of octopuses huddled together in the cracks of the rock. Octopuses are famously loners. Finding a few is normal. Finding a crowd is not. And this was a multitude. Pale, pearl-colored octopuses, each one flipped upside down, arms curled protectively around a clutch of eggs. By 2023, a team led by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute had figured out what they were looking at and confirmed its scale. This is the largest known aggregation of octopuses anywhere on the planet. In one small patch, they counted about 6,000 nests and estimate the full site holds 20,000 or more. They named it the Octopus Garden. The secret, it turned out, is heat. Hidden in the volcanic rock are cryptic hydrothermal springs, faint seeps of warm water, so subtle you'd miss them, but for a slight shimmer in the dark. At the abyss's normal, near-freezing temperature, a pearl octopus's eggs might take 5 to 8 years to hatch, an eternity of vulnerability to predators. But bathed in the warmth leaking from the extinct volcano, those eggs hatch in under 2 years. The mothers travel here to give their young that head start, and, like all their kind, they never leave. They guard their eggs, never eating again, and die as the young hatch. An entire deep-sea nursery, powered by the fading heat of a dead volcano, discovered essentially in our own decade. It's a reminder that California's frontier isn't only up in its mountains and faults. It runs straight down into an ocean we've barely begun to map. The moving mountains, the Sierra Nevada's modern growth spurt. While we often think of mountains as permanent, static monuments, the Sierra Nevada range is actively moving. For over a century, scientists debated exactly how fast these peaks were rising and why. Today, using highly sensitive, continuous GPS networks and satellite radar, INSAR, geophysicists have discovered that the Sierra Nevada is experiencing a modern uplift, growing by up to 1 to 2 millimeters per year. What makes this transformation fascinating is that it isn't just driven by deep tectonic plates shoving past each other. It is also deeply connected to water. As California undergoes intense cycles of historic drought, the state's massive underground aquifers are depleted of billions of tons of water. Stripped of that immense weight, the Earth's crust literally flexes and springs upward like an unloaded mattress. This complex interplay between climate, human water usage, and geology means the very height of California's tallest peaks is fluctuating in real time. The plastic reefs of Monterey Canyon, an Anthropocene deep-sea mystery. 2 miles beneath the surface, not far from the pristine octopus garden at Davidson Seamount, lies the Monterey Submarine Canyon, a dynamic underwater Grand Canyon. Using advanced remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, marine scientists recently uncovered a sobering, unintended transformation. Deep-sea currents have turned this dark, high-pressure canyon into a conveyor belt for human debris, creating a bizarre, plastic reef thousands of feet down. Researchers are finding that items like decades-old soda cans, tires, and microplastics are settling into the deep ocean floor. Strangely, the deep-sea ecosystem is adapting in real time to this synthetic landscape. Unique invertebrates, deep-sea corals, and small crabs are now using this trash as artificial reefs, colonizing plastic structures because natural rocky outcrops are scarce in the muddy canyon depths. It is a stark reminder that human influence has reached the deepest, most inaccessible corners of the state, well before we even have the technology to map them. Would you like to dive deeper into how scientists use satellite radar to track these geological shifts? Or perhaps explore more about the deep-sea discoveries off the coast? Giants, blooms, and the deep past. Back on land, California still holds the largest living things that have ever existed, and even they are changing before our eyes. Along the foggy northern coast stand the coast redwoods, the tallest trees on Earth, some brushing 380 feet. In the southern Sierra grow their cousins, the giant sequoias. Not the tallest, but the most massive living organisms on the planet. Trees so old, they were already ancient when Rome fell. For most of history, we thought of them as nearly immortal, shrugging off the wildfires that periodically swept their groves. Recent years shattered that assumption. In the wildfires of 2020 and 2021 alone, scientists estimate that somewhere between roughly 13 and 19% of all the large giant sequoias on Earth were killed. A devastating share of an irreplaceable population lost in just 2 fire seasons, as a hotter, drier climate turned once survivable fires into infernos. The discovery that even the giants are vulnerable has rewritten how California fights to protect them. And, after the wet winters, the deserts answer with superblooms so vast they've been photographed from space. Brief, riotous proof of how much dormant life is coiled in that dry ground, waiting for its year. Even California's human story reaches deeper than we long believed. Out on the Channel Islands, off the southern coast, lie some of the oldest human remains ever found in the Americas. Bones dating back around 13,000 years, feeding ongoing research into a bold idea that the first people to reach this coast may have come not over land, but by boat, following a rich kelp highway down the Pacific Rim. The story of who arrived here first and how is still being actively rewritten with each new find. A work in progress. So what is California, really? It is not a finished landscape. It is a place caught permanently mid-sentence, a coastline sliding toward Alaska, a supervolcano slowly exhaling, ghost lakes flickering in and out of the desert, a great river unclenching after a century, a hidden garden glowing with life in the crushing dark, and giant trees learning, too late, that they were never immortal after all. What's changed is not that California finally started moving. It always moved. What's changed is us, the fiber optic cables now listening kilometers underground, the satellites measuring a desert lake by the inch, the robots 2 miles down counting octopus by the thousand, the sensors that can warn a city seconds before the Earth arrives. For the first time, we can watch a restless land transform in something close to real time. Most places let us believe they're permanent. California never lets us forget the truth, that the ground itself is alive and still being written. I'll keep following what it does next.